Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. So we're going to do another one of my favorite builds, and this is one that I created after I created a different build. This one is called the North Star Smiter. The North Star Smiter is a smiter that I designed with the idea of having the best of both worlds. I didn't particularly like the fact that smiters were kind of useless in all real content. And what I mean by that is that when you're fighting, like, say, for instance, I don't know, Chaos Sanctuary, and you're going through all these monsters. I mean, yeah, you can smite one monster to death relatively quickly, and you can provide fanaticism for the group, but for the most part, on the whole, everybody's killing everything faster than you are. Much faster. And then on top of that, the other side of the equation is the Fist of the Heavens. So Fist of the Heavens is it's something that does pretty good against demons and undead, right? But it doesn't really have a lot of good usefulness outside of demons and undead. So whenever you come across a a beastie or something like that, you're kind of just SOL. Also, Fist of the Heavens doesn't really do as amazingly versus single targets either. Most notably is the fact that, number one, even if you fire your massive Holy Bolt, which does like 8,745 damage, it doesn't apply open wounds, it doesn't apply prevent monster heal, it doesn't apply crushing blow, etc., etc., etc. So you can always kill faster with Smite if you build it correctly than you can with Holy Bolt. It just depends on how you've built your character. Now, the North Star Smiter represents a interesting intersection between the Fist of the Heavens Paladin and a Smite Paladin. And how I have this set up, basically, is that he is set up as a pure smiter. He is not set up as a Fist of the Heavens Paladin that happens to smite. He is set up as a smiter that happens to Fist of the Heavens, which is a very important a very important why am I missing the word all of a sudden? Distinction, a very important distinction. Now, the reason why this distinction is important is because you focus on getting the highest smite damage that you can possibly get. Now, my smite damage with my Fanaticism aura is 3,248. It's pretty decent. I am utilizing, however, a grief item, which the damage does not show up on the panel. So the plus 81 that is written on the Astrion's Iron Ward functions identically to the way that grief does, and it does not actually appear on the panel. So that damage is also being applied as well. Now let's go over my gear first, then we'll go over my Mercenary's gear, and then we'll get into some practical examples, shall we? So first off, Astrion's Iron Ward is one of the main focuses for this build. As far as I'm concerned, if you're not using Astrion's Ward, you are not a North Star Smiter. You pretty much have to use this item to make this build. There are some items that you can use as placeholders until you get this item. Heaven's Light and the Redeemer are both interesting options that will allow you to get the crushing blow, and one of them has the grief damage as well, but not the crushing blow. So they also have the plus to skills. The important thing here is that you need the plus to skills, you need the crushing blow, and you need the grief damage all in one weapon. Astrion's Iron Ward is one of those items that is actually surprisingly good in very specific circumstances. For instance, Astrion's actually beats grief in smite damage, very ever so slightly. However, it also opens up a large number of gear options, which is the more important part. You're not actually losing any DPS over grief, but you actually also get much better gear options in general because of the fact that Astrion's has plus 4 combat skills, which grief does not have. 33% crushing blow, which grief does not have. Slows target, which grief does not have. And then, of course, it also has the grief damage, which grief has more of, but you at least get some grief damage on the Astrion's Iron Ward as well, which also adds to your smite. On top of this, we're also using Herald of Zakarum, and Herald of Zakarum is a very big piece of this set as well, and the reason why we're using Haas is because it's also plus 4 skills. So between the Haas, which we've upgraded to the Zakarum Shield and ummed, between the Haas and the Astrions, we are looking at 4 combat skills and 4 combat skills, which means we have plus 8 to combat skills between these two items, which is already a lot of plus to skills. On top of this, we do use a +2 skills amulet. This is a safety amulet crafted specifically to give us access to more vitality. Because it gives us 8% increased chance of blocking, we don't need to put as much dex. Because we're using Astrions that doesn't require as high dexterity as, say, a Phase Blade, we can also utilize more dexterity into vitality, and so we have more life. This is one of the best things about the Astrion's Iron Ward Caduceus is the low requirements, as well as the ability to put on other pieces of equipment, which then increase your HP. And I actually ended up with 1,726 HP without COA. And that is pretty impressive, to be honest. Once you add in COA and things like that, you can go even higher. The helmet traditionally is a couple different things. So there's a couple different ways you can build this character, and let me talk about that really quickly. First off, you don't always have to Zod the Astrion's Iron Ward, but I prefer to Zod the Astrions, so I'd never have to go back to town and repair it. One of the things that Grief does have over Astrions is it's indestructible, and adding a Zod rune to Astrions does make it also indestructible. Another way that you could do it, though, is you could put a Shale rune in this, and you could very easily hit the maximum smite breakpoint much easier, but you'd be into town repairing the weapon every now and then. That's up to you. With the helmet, if you go with the Zod method, you're going to need 30% increased attack speed on your helmet. This will get you to your maximum breakpoint for smite, which is exactly where you want to be. I happen to get a +2 Paladin, 30 strength, all res 14 circlet, and that's when I threw the 2 IAS jewels in there for that. This is basically just getting me to the maximum breakpoint. On top of that, I did choose Goblin Toes, which I upgraded to Mirrored Boots. I am using a Ravenfrost, of course, for the Can't Be Frozen, the dexterity, and a little bit of mana too, why not? The attack rating, however, does not matter. So if you are looking for a Ravenfrost for the North Star Smiter build, you don't need attack rating. You can just go with the lowest attack rating with the highest dex. The higher the dex, the better. A 20 dex Ravenfrost with garbage attack rating would be preferable. Arachnid's Mash for the +1 to skills, which is something that is really paramount to this, is basically just plus to skills. As you can clearly see, I already have Sojourn as well, which is another +1 to skills. So you're talking about 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 from the principal armor, which is where I get all my Holy Bolt on striking, by the way. So what is it, 14, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, all right? So we're at 16 plus to skills right here with just of our equipment. And then we have 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. We are looking at plus 26 to our combat skills, which is massive. We also use Drax, which helps us with our life tap, obviously. And I have other ways to deal with issues with regeneration. We'll talk about that. As for my Mercenary is using an Insight Thresher, Ethereal. He's also using a Chains of Honor for the lifesteal and Andariel's Visage. Now, this actually might change, because when I originally made this character, I was utilizing the best that I currently had available to me in Regeneration. And you might be asking what I'm talking about. Well, basically what I'm doing is I'm using the Prayer Merc, which gives 29 regen. I'm also using Insight, which gives me Meditation, and the Prayer synergizes with Meditation, which gives me another 29 regen. And if I throw the Cure Helmet on him instead of Andariel's Visage, he will get another 29 regen, because Prayer also synergizes with Cleansing. So that might be a good change for this build. It's just not something that existed when I originally created this character, so forgive me. So Andariel's Visage was just something that I happen to have as a helmet there. But Chains of Honor is the plate that you really want, because it has life leech. But you can go with a cheaper plate, and Ethereal Bone Flesh works just as well until you can manage to get your Chains of Honor for your Merc. And the reason why you need this is because there's no life leech on the weapon. And if you use the Cure Helmet, there's no life leech on the Cure Helmet, which means then you're stuck with the only option is the armor plate for your life leech. So Chains of Honor becomes basically the main piece that you would want for that. Skill-wise, how my character is set up is 1 point in Salvation, 1 point in Prayer, 1 point in Cleansing. I also have maxed out Fanaticism. That's very important to this particular build. And then on top of that, we also have maximum Holy Shield. It's very important that you get max Holy Shield as soon as possible, because max Holy Shield is where most of your smite damage comes from. You also want to max out Fist of the Heavens, and you want to max out Holy Bolt. These are two very important ones as well, and maxing out these two will give you the appropriate Fist of the Heavens damage that you're looking for. You will eventually put some points into Smite, not very many. At 13 is what I ended up with, and if I leveled up a couple more times, what is that, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, so 5 more times I would put 5 more points in there, so that would be a total of 5, 6, 7, 8, so 18 base on Smite. The reason why you don't put as many points into Smite is because the off-weapon ED is not as important as the Smite damage that comes from the shield. So the Holy Shield actually adds 161 to 164 base smite damage to your smite. On top of that, you're also getting plus 81 base smite damage to your smite. So when you cast Holy Shield, you're going from the meager smite damage of the original shield to 210, and then you just simply add the 81 on that, which means that you're looking at 291 smite damage for your Herald of Zakarum shield, which then translates out to how much damage that you're dishing out. Now, practically, when it comes to the Mercenary, he helps me maintain my regeneration without having to use Life Tap. One of the problems that I encountered with this build is that Dracula's Grasp, as nice as they are, do not always provide you with the regeneration that you need, because it doesn't always proc. And there's many different times where you might be in battle only to find out that, well, it's not really helping you out because for some reason it just doesn't want to proc at this particular moment. And so you're slowly and ever slowly dying, right? Well, the goal here is that the Mercenary is providing me with a massive amount of regen constantly through the use of prayer and meditation. This allows me to have a constant source of regeneration no matter what, so that my HP is always nice and topped off, even if I am, otherwise set up. So let me go ahead and change. I have my character set up slightly differently offline. And then, and then, yeah, okay. All right, so practical exam here. So where does the North Star Smiter farm the best? Well, Chaos Sanctuary. That's literally one of the best places they could farm. Now, how do you play this character? Well, you play it as a melee character. You use your Fist of the Heavens when you get into melee range, and you dish out massive amounts of damage. And when you find a target that is particularly tough, like an elite of some kind, you're going to basically just stop and smite them to death. This particular type of build is just one of those builds that works exceedingly well in areas that have large numbers of demons and undead. However, thanks to the Holy Shield, you basically, or the Smite, you can basically pick out any monster that's not even demons and undead and kill them. Now, I'm not going to say that you're going to be killing beasties with an exceptionally fast rate. For instance, you're probably never going to be the best cow farmer in the game. But does it really matter that you're not the best cow farmer in the game? Because to be perfectly honest, when it comes to cows, cows are only level 81. Chaos is 85. So if you're going to farm zones, Chaos is the better zone to farm anyway, because the density is there. The monster types, are you can basically just roll through them as a Fist of the Heavens Paladin and not really have to worry about it. So you just fire off your Fist of the Heavens, you go in, you do your smiting, and you generally just annihilate pretty much everything. It's really not even that big of a deal. This character also works surprisingly well at taking on bosses. It's kind of a shame that I don't have a particularly nasty boss to show you, but I can at least show you me absolutely murdering Diablo. As you can clearly see, the Fist of the Heavens does massive amounts of damage. We're talking about Holy Bolt damage of 5,296 per Holy Bolt, which, as you can see, just clears the screen with P1 Hell with absolute ease. And this character has no problems with P8 Hell either. I just can't show you P8 Hell because I don't have the offline character anymore. But as you can clearly see, he just walks through this freaking Chaos Sanctuary. Like weaknesses, though, I mean, you will be able to do areas with beasts, but it's going to be much slower. You're going to be limited from using your Fist of the Heavens, obviously. Things get a little bit tricky there. When you do Uber Tristram and things like that, it's actually surprisingly easy. The Fist of the Heavens will literally clear everything in there. So, you know, obviously Mephisto spawns tons of skeletons, right? All undead. Absolutely demolished by Fist of the Heavens. You just tap one Fist of the Heavens, and the whole freaking group is just dead. When it comes to the Pit Lords, you can kill the Pit Lords with the Fist of the Heavens as well, and you can also kill the Ghosts and the Vampires with the Fist of the Heavens. There's literally nothing that you can't kill in the Uber Tristram with just the Fist of the Heavens, except for the Ubers themselves, and the Smite allows you to dish out all that damage to the Ubers. So you can very easily run Ubers with this. You can very easily kill Uber Mephisto, Uber Baal, Uber Diablo, and Pandemonium Diablo, all of which with great proficiency on this guy. I believe I actually clocked my frickin' Uber Diablo kill at like, I think it was like 15 seconds or something. I can't remember exactly, but it was on stream one time, and we did a little timer. And I actually raced against a pure smiter using Grief, and I still managed to like basically have the same exact time as a Grief smiter. And when I say that Astrion's is slightly better than Grief, what I mean is it's like an imperceptibly small difference that you're never going to notice. The two are basically identical. The difference between using Grief and using the Astrions is that you're basically getting the best of both worlds instead of just one world. If you set up a Grief Smiter, you have a Smiter that is basically just a Smiter. If you set up the North Star Smiter, you have a Smiter that is a exceptionally good Smiter with a pretty decent amount of Crushing Blow at 58% Crushing Blow, which you could potentially get a little bit higher if you wanted to. And also 25% Open Wounds, which allows you to basically just absolutely demolish everything in the Smite world. But then on top of that, not only do you have a Smiter that is perfectly capable of smiting and killing just about any Uber boss, but you also have a Fist of the Heavens Paladin, which does 5.2k Fist of the Heavens Holy Bolt damage and 8.4k Holy Bolt damage on the straight shot, which means that you're literally just doing massive amounts of damage in every single category that you possibly can. If you come across an undead or a demon, you demolish them with Fist of the Heavens. If you come across a non-undead or a non-demon, you basically just smite them to death. And that's really all there is to it. I could go right now to, I don't know, let's say Canyon of the Magi as a, because I know there's a bunch of non-undead and non-demons in Canyon of the Magi, right? So let's just pick out some of the non-undead and non-demons, and we can just, as you can clearly see, we even have a stone skin here. Absolutely annihilated. You're not going to have any trouble on this character rolling through beasties. It might not be the fastest thing in the world. It's not going to be as fast as a Fist of the Heavens Paladin. But with Fist of the Heavens, you often get stuck in situations where you come across beasties and you don't have the ability to get through them. Like maybe you come down here into Talros's tomb, and you're firing off all your little Fist of the Heavens and you're murdering everything, and then you come across the beetles, right? The beetles are beasts, and then how do you deal with the beetles? Well, on a North Star Smiter, you smite them. You smote them with extreme smitey smoteness. That's what you do, and you let them have it. Now, one of the things you may be noticing is that I'm shooting Holy Bolts every single time I smite. Well, this is because of the Principal Armor, which allows me to basically spam the Holy Bolts. It has a 100% chance to cast Holy Bolt on striking, and you can replace this. You don't necessarily need this in the build, I will say this. So you can put an Enigma here, you could put a Chains of Honor here. There's a couple different options that you could use in this slot that don't necessarily have to be this specific piece of armor. You could maybe even put a Guardian Angel Templar coat if you wanted to be more tanky. I chose this one particularly because I wanted to shore up the problems of Smite. And what are the problems of Smite? Well, if you think about Smite realistically, Smite has several problems. First off, it's physical only. Second off, it's single target only, right? Third off, it doesn't leech life. And all of these can be serious problems, right? I addressed the leeching of life by giving myself the double regen on the Mercenary, which I could have gone with a Might Merc to get more damage out of Smite, by the way. If you want to do that, you could go with the Might Merc, and you could just get more damage out of your Smite. But I fixed that by getting the regen, right? Also, having infinite mana certainly doesn't hurt. The single target aspect of Smite was fixed by Holy Bolt. So by adding in the Holy Bolt, I'm actually shooting the Holy Bolts out and doing more damage to everything past where I'm standing, right? So I'm actually, whenever I smite, you'll see that I'm literally just shooting these Holy Bolts all over the place, and they hit all the targets. So whenever anything is in a straight line, the other monsters are also getting hit by the Holy Bolts. And in big giant packs of monsters, those Holy Bolts are actually dishing out pretty decent amounts of damage. The other thing is what did we say earlier? Smite is only physical damage, right? Well, when you add in the Holy Bolt into it, it's not just physical damage, which means that you are no longer in a physical only situation. Yes, you could use your Fist of the Heavens, and yes, you could use your Holy Bolt in those situations, but what's really interesting is that if I come across a monster that is, mostly immune to physical, and he's a really tough little punk, I can just start smiting him, shooting out these Holy Bolts, which are only level 5, by the way, but they do gain full synergy bonus from the 1000% increase of 5 levels in Fist of the Heavens. So Fist of the Heavens gives 50% magic damage per level, and that's 20 levels. So 10 times 50 is 1,000, right? So, sorry, 20 times 50 is 1,000. You're going to just run it. So 50 times 20 is 1,000%. Right? So when I fire off my little lowly level 5 Holy Bolts, they still actually do a pretty decent amount of damage per Holy Bolt. And because I'm shooting off 4.27, which is the number of attacks that I have on Smite, those Holy Bolts are coming out at a rate that is exceedingly fast. I'm firing off 4.27 Holy Bolts per second that are fully synergized at level 5, which is not bad at all. And it's just kind of a cool little thing that you can add into your smite, so that as you're smiting, you're dishing out damage to targets that are not even near you. And this comes in handy when you're fighting with a friend, too, and this is also an interesting one. As you can see here, this guy's immune to physical, and I just killed him with the Holy Bolts. That was a good example. So I literally just killed him with the Holy Bolts from Smite. I didn't break his immunity. I killed him with the Holy Bolts. I just smote him to death with Holy Bolts. It's beautiful. What was I talking about? When you're with a friend. So when you're with a friend, the Holy Bolts actually heal too. So if you're smiting, for instance, and you're with a friend, and let's say you're smiting an Uber boss or something like that, and you're shooting off Holy Bolts, they can just stand in your Holy Bolts, and they can actually get the healing effect. You can also synergize the healing effect on the Holy Bolts that come out of the smite by building up Prayer. So Prayer is the synergy for Holy Bolt, and if you throw 20 points into Prayer, you're going to get 20 times 20, which is, I believe, what, 400%? So you're going to get 400% additional healing on the level 5 Holy Bolts, which actually do a significant amount. I ran this earlier in another video, and it was about, was it 757 heals per second? 757 heals per second of Holy Bolts. So if you just stand in my Holy Bolts, you can get that healing. The other cool thing is that when you're fighting with your Mercenary, if you're fighting a boss or something like that, you can angle yourself so that your boss is on the opposite side of your Mercenary, and your Holy Bolts will actually heal your Merc. So you can both attack and heal your Merc at the same time with your Smite. All in all, the Holy Bolt, Holy Fist of the Heavens Smite Paladin that I created at the North Star Smiter is one of the craziest builds that I've made so far. The cons of the build are, well, you can't really do cow level that fast. Cow level's not really your place of play, which is perfectly fine. But you are going to burn through with a burning passion Chaos. Chaos is your place. Whenever you go to Chaos, you are going to absolutely annihilate Chaos from existence. Anything with undead, anything with demons, you are going to annihilate. Any big giant monsters, honking monster madnesses that have tons of HP and just won't go down. You're a smiter. Guess what? There is no big monster for you. You pick out the biggest monster in the pack, and you can literally just annihilate them. And while you're annihilating the biggest monster in the pack, you can literally just fire off a couple fists to the heavens and deal out massive amounts of damage to everything nearby. It's one of the coolest things about the build is that literally you can just say, for instance, let's go to Flayer Jungle real quick. And I like smiting the flayers. The flayers are, Fist of the Heavenings, the smiters. So let's say you're fighting this guy right here. You know, you're like fighting him. He's like, oh god, it's so hard. And then you just fire off a Fist of the Heavens. You can literally focus on one monster with this build and still attack the entire group. So you pick out that big hefty boy in the back, right? You pick out that guy who's got the Holy Freeze aura, right, like this, and then you fire off a couple Fists of the Heavens using him as your main target, killing everything within that area. And since you are a melee fighter and you don't really have the caster vibe to you, it's not really a big of a deal when you're in the middle of a big pack of monsters. For some characters like casters, it feels that way. But with this character, not so much. And there's a reason why. With level 47 Holy Shield, you are looking at 715% increase to defense, 39% increased chance of blocking. You always have 75% chance of blocking, even with minimal dexterity. As you can see, I only have 57 dex put into this character. 57, that's it. 108 strength, 57 dex, and 385 vitality. The majority of my points went into vitality because the way this character is built, it allows me to basically run the lowest dexterity that I possibly can. On top of this, when you have freaking level 47 Holy Shield, you have 12,640 defense. The chance that most monsters will hit me in the game is like 17% or something. It's like nothing. And honestly, if I could get my defense a little bit higher, I probably should. Like, for instance, if I were to use Chains of Honor instead of Principle, my defense would go up to 14,686. And if I threw something else, even higher defense in that slot, I could get even more defense out of the character. To the point where I would be sitting on just a massive, massive ridiculousness of defense. The helmet, too. If I were to use a different helmet that had more defense, like, for instance, Andariel's Visage, which is also +2 to skills and increased attack speed, which isn't a bad choice, actually. I could potentially utilize Andariel's Visage in that spot, and then I could get my Chains of Honor back on, and now I'm sitting at 17,090 defense. And as you can see, because Holy Shield is so ridiculous in the amount of defense that it gives you, it really does stack up high, high, high. And you might be saying, well, defense is the worst stat in the game. Well, it's not really. When you have massive amounts of defense, you can literally just walk into a group of monsters and they can't even touch you. The chance that one of these monsters right now will hit me is a 13% chance, and on top of that, I have a 75% chance to block their attacks, which means that the majority of the time, they will not be able to touch me. The defensive nature of this paladin cannot be understated. He is literally a massive beefcake of a paladin. And on top of that, if you wanted to switch from something like Chains of Honor, for instance, and instead go with a tankier plate. I know Chains of Honor is pretty tanky, but let's talk about a tankier plate, right? So a tankier plate would be something like Guardian Angel Templar Code, which increases the maximum resistances of all of your resistances, right? So then you would be able to stack up to, you'd have freaking, what is that? I think it's 90. You can get 90% to all resistances, or 85. I can't remember which one. I think it's 15. So 75, yeah, 80, and then 80. So 85, I think is what it would, no, 90. Yeah, 90. It would be 90. So you'd be at 90% all res, basically. I'm not poisoned, though. I'm actually getting the poison res from Principle. And I'm getting another 5% poison res from, or 10% from Andariel's Visage. I mean, it's all very interesting when you think about it, because there's a lot of ways that you can potentially customize this character. As long as you have your plus to skills and your plus to skills, you can definitely swap pieces of equipment out here and there. I definitely do like the Principle, though, because of the massive amount of life it gives me. It has 149 life on it. So when I take off Principle, I do lose a pretty hefty chunk of that HP that I'm sitting on, which is really nice to have above 1500 HP, let me say. All in all, the freaking Northstar Smiter is an amazing do-it-all character. If you want to kill Smiters, done. You want to farm Chaos, done. You want to magic find, you can even do that. If you set this character up slightly differently, and I'll explain how you can set this character up for magic finding. The first thing that you're going to do is, instead of running Andy's Visage, you're going to run a Shaco. Preferably with a P Topaz in it, and then you are also going to run Enigma, which has Magic Find, or you could potentially run Scalder's Ire would be the best choice. Ethereal Scalder's Ire would be a very optimal choice for this. You would only give up 1 skill plus, but you would still get a massive amount of Magic Find in return. And between those 2 items right there, that would be a very good amount of Magic Find. Another way that you could add in a little bit more Magic Find is the Amulet, which would be a good choice. And if you're doing easy content, you don't necessarily need to be wearing Drax all the time, especially with the regeneration that's provided by the Mercenary. So you don't necessarily need Drax. And in that case, you could potentially swap out to something like your, Chanseys, or maybe a really nice pair of Magic Find gloves. And you could potentially swap out Arachnid's Mesh for the gold wrap. If you did that, you would have a very decent amount of Magic Find and still be able to kill relatively fast in Chaos. You would lose a little bit of your killing potential in terms of Smite and Fist of the Heavens, but it wouldn't be so much that it would really be all that silly. And it's worth it if you want to do magic finding on this character. So Shaco with a P Topaz, Scalder's Ire right here, and maybe a gold wrap, and by then you're well over. I think it's well over 200%, right? Because Scalder's Ire is like 100 some odd, and then Shaco is like 74, and then Gold Wrap is what, 30? So yeah, you're over 200% at that point, and you haven't really lost much of your killing capacity on the character at all. Very, very minimal gear change for a pretty large amount of magic find. I think that's pretty much it when it comes to Northstar Smiter. This definitely is one of my most powerful builds that I've done to date. And if you're interested in doing the Northstar Smiter, well, now you have all the information that you need. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and keep watching.